Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever wondered how a country like North Korea, despite facing immense challenges, immense isolation, navigates its economy and its place in the world?
Mm.
Today, we're going on a deep dive into that very question. We're exploring the fascinating and often harrowing story of North Korea's economic and social landscape
Right.
and how these internal forces shape its unique foreign relations.
Indeed. And our sources for this deep dive are, well, quite comprehensive. We've pulled from various Wikipedia entries covering the 1990s North Korean famine, its broader history, its foreign relations.
Oh,
And we've supplemented that with academic insights into North Korea's complex economic reforms. What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how multiple interwoven factors,
yeah.
from specific internal policy decisions and devastating natural disasters to these massive global geopolitical shifts, they've all defined the country's trajectory.
Right.
So our mission, really, is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, helping you understand the complex forces at play here.
You know, it might surprise many of you that North Korea wasn't always in such, well, dire economic straits.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 1965, the British economist Joan Robinson even described North Korea's economic development as a miracle.
A miracle, really.
Yeah, with its GDP per capita estimated to be pretty much on par with South Korea's until the 1970s.
Wow.
This is a period when the country was fiercely pushing its Juche, or self-reliance, ideology. That's their guiding philosophy, right? National self-sufficiency.
Exactly.
And this was notably driven by campaigns like the Chalima movement in the late 50s and early 60s. It was a rapid production drive named after a mythical winged horse,
Right, the Chilima.
aimed for mass mobilization and consolidating agricultural collectivization. And get this, by 1968, all homes reportedly had electricity.
All homes.
Yeah, and by 1972, virtually all children were enrolled in school.
So given that, that impressive start, what led to such a dramatic shift? If we connect this to the bigger picture, the expansion of North Korea's economy and living standards really began to halt in the 1970s. A key decision, it seems, was to borrow heavily from abroad,
Okay, why?
largely to invest in military industries. The goal was reducing their dependence on Soviet and Chinese aid.
Ah, okay.
However, then the 1973 oil crisis hit. Global mineral prices, which North Korea relied on for export earnings, they just plummeted.
Oh, bad timing.
Terrible timing.
Yeah.
It left them with massive debts they just couldn't repay. They defaulted on foreign loans in 1974
74.
and virtually ceased repayments by 1985. And critically, that cut off access to crucial foreign technology.
And this, of course, brings us to a pivotal and just devastating turning point: the complete collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991.
Right. A huge external shock.
For North Korea, this wasn't just political, it was an economic death knell. It immediately ended all Soviet aid, all trade concessions, including that cheap oil their agricultural sector relied so heavily on.
Yeah, vital inputs gone overnight.
Energy imports fell by a staggering 75%. 75%.
Incredible.
This pushed the economy into a free fall, leading straight into that devastating period known as the North Korean famine, or as they call it, the arduous march, from about 1995 to 2000.
The arduous march. Yeah.
And the estimates for total deaths during this time, they range wildly, from 240,000 up to 3.5 million.
Such a wide range.
It is. More recent U.S. Census Bureau research from 2011 estimated maybe 500,000 to 600,000 excess deaths between 93 and 2000, and potentially up to 1 million by 2008. Just staggering numbers.
Absolutely. And the severity of the crisis was certainly exacerbated by natural disasters, floods, droughts.
Right, they had those too.
But the inflexibility of North Korea's centrally planned system played an even more significant sort of underlying role.
How so?
Well, the public distribution system, the PDS,
Yeah.
which 62% of the population relied on,
Yeah.
it just failed dramatically.
Jailed how? Like no food.
Well, reports suggest food was distributed based on political standing and loyalty. So, for example, a privileged industrial worker might get 900 grams of cereal a day. An ordinary worker, 700 grams. A retired citizen, only 300 grams.
300.
And just for context, the World Food Program considers 600 grams of cereal per day to be less than a survival ration.
Wow. So even the better rations were barely enough.
Barely. And by 1997, the system was reportedly feeding only 6% of the population. Daily allocations plummeted to just 128 grams per person.
128 grams.
It reflected these long-term government decisions, a closed economic model, austerity measures like the Eat 2 Meals a Day campaign that started back in '91.
When you hear about people, even in the supposedly better off parts of the country, being so hungry they reportedly ate maize cobs before the crop was fully developed,
Oh, my.
reducing the expected harvest by 50%. It really brings home the sheer desperation, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Just unimaginable.
And children were hit especially hard. Alarmingly high death rates reported by the WHO: 93 out of every 1,000 for children, 23 out of 1,000 for infants.
Just heartbreaking.
Undernourished mothers couldn't breastfeed. Infant formula wasn't available. And this sadly led to a population of homeless migrant children known as Kutjibi.
The Kochebi, yes. The flower swallows.
And even the military, despite the whole military first, the Songun policy, prioritizing military needs above all else, even ordinary soldiers often remained hungry.
So the system was failing, even its supposed priority group.
Seems like it.
This famine, though, catastrophic as it was, also triggered significant, albeit unintended changes.
Like what?
It led to this dramatic revival of illegal private market activities.
Yeah.
Just out of sheer necessity.
People had to find ways to survive.
Exactly. Smuggling across the border, particularly into China, boomed. Some estimates say up to 250,000 North Koreans moved there.
250,000 people?
Yeah. And this desperate situation, it fostered widespread government corruption. It nearly led to the collapse of the old state controls and regulations.
Things were really breaking down.
They were. Now, in terms of international response, North Korea did receive food and humanitarian aid from various countries between '94 and 2002.
Okay, so there was some help.
There was. Though, interestingly, they notably requested that food supplies stop being delivered in 2002.
Okay, so with the devastation of the Arduous March still pretty recent history, how did the Kim Jong Il era, begin to grapple with these economic realities? What was their initial approach to reform?
Well, in direct response to the crisis, the Kim Jong Il era saw these attempts at reform. The big one was the 7.1 Economic Management Improvement Measures, introduced in 2002.
Okay, 7.1 measures. What did they involve?
The aims were sort of to quell internal turmoil, normalize production, overcome the fiscal crisis, and suppress inflation, all by carefully introducing market mechanisms into the planned economy.
How? What did that look like practically?
It involved sharp increases in things like consumer prices up 25-fold,
Wow.
wages up 18-fold, foreign exchange rate shot up 70-fold, all to try and align state prices with unofficial market levels.
Trying to catch up with reality, basically.
Essentially, yes. Businesses were given greater autonomy, and a self-supporting accounting system was introduced.
Meaning
State enterprises were expected to cover their own costs and generate profit, much like a business in a market economy would.
And crucially, these reforms gave an official nod to market-driven activities, right? So how did that play out on the ground?
Well, an earned income indicator was put in place to evaluate business performance. And importantly, it allowed production and distribution outside the central plan.
Ah, okay. So some flexibility there.
Definitely. Markets for production materials were officially approved for the first time, which let factories barter their output for raw materials they need.
So bypassing the state allocation for something.
Exactly. And even the traditional farmers market was transformed into the general market in 2003, selling a wider range of goods, processed foods, manufactured products.
Not just farm produce.
Right. And prices aligned with market demand. Some state-run stores were even leased or sold, allowing individuals to become effectively de facto operators of businesses. Things like billiard halls, restaurants.
Interesting. So individuals running state assets.
In a way, yes. However, these measures were generally seen as lacking completeness. They didn't go far enough for some.
Right.
And further, more ambitious reform measures in 2004, the Park Bong-ju reform measures, which would have granted even greater autonomy, they kind of fizzled out. Reports suggest resistance from what were described as conservative forces within the system, essentially elements resistant to changes that might undermine central control or their own interests.
Okay. So while those initial reforms under Kim Jong-il laid some groundwork, they didn't quite stick. What changed when Kim Jong Un took the helm? Did he push for more fundamental shifts or just kind of continue those earlier efforts?
Well, when Kim Jong Un took power, he moved pretty quickly. He ordered economic management improvements in December 2011, explicitly aiming to resolve food issues and find a Juche-based economic management solution.
Still framed within Juche, then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This led to what's known as the Our-style economic management system. It was gradually implemented, supported by new laws and revisions between 2012 and 2015.
Our style. Okay, what was the key component?
A really key part was the Socialist Enterprise Responsibility Management System, or SERMS, launched in January 2014.
Right. Now, what's fascinating here you mentioned is how these reforms emphasize decentralization and actually institutionalizing markets. That sounds like a bigger step than before.
It really was. It's a significant departure.
Can you explain the practical implications? How do you integrate market activity into the state's structure instead of just tolerating it on the fringes?
Okay, so the national planning indicators, the targets set by the state, were divided into central, regional, and enterprise levels. This drastically reduced the top-down mandatory quotas.
Giving more power lower down.
Exactly. Businesses and farms gained significant autonomy to plan their own operations. But more importantly, market mechanisms were formally integrated into the planning system itself.
How does that work?
Well, for example, raw materials needed for products that fall under those enterprise and farm indicators. They're now expected to be procured at market prices, not centrally supplied like before.
Ah, okay, so they have to go find them on the market.
Yes. And enterprises and farms gain the right to set their own prices to cover production costs. They can even enter order contracts reflecting market prices, often outside the formal People's Economy Plan.
That sounds like a really profound shift.
It marked a very significant shift from previous reforms, which kind of kept market activities outside planning. This Our Style system was officially launched at the Workers' Party Congress in 2016.
Which was the first one in 36 years, right?
That's right, a major event. And in 2019, this Socialist Enterprise Responsibility Management System officially replaced the older collective economic management system from the Kim Il-sung era.
And Kim Jong Un has been more vocal about supporting this.
Yes, unlike his father, Kim Jong Un has publicly championed this system, signaling a stronger commitment, or at least a different approach to promoting it.
So, the ripple effect of this new system, it aims to align the interests of the government, businesses, individual households, creating a more favorable environment for market activities.
That seems to be the goal.
It sounds like a pragmatic recognition of what was already happening, legitimizing those activities and fostering this new idea of self-reliance through the market.
A kind of sanctioned market activity, yes. It's strengthened the connection, maybe blurred the boundaries between the official planned economy and the unofficial market economy.
But how much is this truly transforming daily life versus just, putting an official stamp on the gray market that already existed?
Well, that's the key question, isn't it? While the system has led to some achievements, reports of improved productivity, increased production volume by better utilizing existing capacity.
Okay, so some positive signs.
Some. But it still faces significant limitations. Severe shortages of energy, raw materials, funding. These continue to be major obstacles.
Right. The fundamental resource constraints haven't vanished.
Exactly. Businesses struggle to raise internal investment funds, which limits their ability to actually expand production capacity. Plus, the reforms haven't addressed fundamental issues like ownership rights. That gap between the official and unofficial economies still persists.
And what about things like taxes?
Well, they haven't tackled the burden of what are called quasi-taxes, these unofficial levies, or demands for contributions businesses have to make, like funding social tasks or loyalty funds.
Ah, so extra burdens outside the official system.
Precisely. Nor do they fully integrate the privileged economy, that network of state enterprises tied to the party and military, into the central planning framework. So it raises that important question.
Yeah.
Will these legal and institutional changes truly translate into tangible, widespread improvements in real economic management and the daily lives of ordinary people? That remains to be seen.
And this is where we see those conflicting reports coming from, right? Some sources, particularly from 2010 to 2013, based on accounts from North Koreans who'd escaped, they claimed starvation had returned. There were even extreme, disturbing reports of cannibalism.
Yes, those reports circulated.
Yeah.
Very grim accounts.
However, if you connect that to the bigger picture, the World Food Program, the WFP, has reported malnutrition and food shortages, yes, but not famine in the way it was in the 90s.
Right, distinguishing between chronic shortage and acute famine.
And a 2016 UN committee report indicated a steady decline in infant mortality since 2008. An academic analysis from 2016 also found health and nutrition levels may be comparable to other developing countries.
So a different picture from other sources.
Yeah, and an analyst in 2017 argued that predictions of returning famine were unfounded, stating the days of mass starvation had largely passed. Online discussions reflect these differing views, too. Some suggest economic improvements under Kim Jong Un, especially with food. while others contend the overall situation remains dire, citing ongoing human rights abuses, state control. It's complex, and we are, of course, just conveying the ideas contained in the original source material here, not endorsing any specific viewpoint.
Absolutely. It's crucial to acknowledge the range of perspectives and reports.
So with this really complex economic backdrop, these internal shifts underway, it's fascinating then to see how North Korea navigates the world stage. How do these internal struggles and reforms manifest in their very unique foreign relations?
Well, North Korea officially has diplomatic relations with 160 states, guided by constitutional principles of independence, peace, and friendship.
Okay.
Its foreign policy generally aims to protect overseas Koreans, build relations on what it calls complete equality and mutual benefit, and support anti-aggression struggles globally.
And the military focus.
Oh yes, the military-first revolutionary line, Songun. That remains a core principle guiding its defense, which obviously heavily impacts its foreign policy posture.
Historically, the Soviet Union was the big backer.
It was, providing significant aid. But since its collapse, China has become its closest ally. They share that long, 1,416-kilometer border.
Right.
China is North Korea's largest trade partner by far, providing about half of all imports, receiving about a quarter of its exports.
So economically vital.
Absolutely. But Beijing's primary concern isn't just trade, it's stability, preventing the collapse of the Kim Jong Un government.
Why is that so important to them?
Well, they fear a massive refugee surge across that border and also the loss of a crucial buffer zone between China and U.S.-allied South Korea.
Wow. The strategic buffer.
Exactly. And this is despite China's own opposition to North Korea's nuclear program and its support for UN sanctions against it. It's a complicated relationship.
Definitely sounds like it. And we've seen some very public, sometimes quite surprising diplomatic engagements that really highlight North Korea's unique position, haven't we?
We have.
For instance, Cuba, a consistent ally since 1960, sharing that militant anti-U.S. stance.
A long-standing ideological alignment.
Yeah, Che Guevara visited in 1960, Fidel Castro in 86. Kim Jong Un even paid respects at the Cuban embassy after Castro's death. That shows one side of their diplomacy.
Sure.
But then, on the other end, you have countries like Botswana breaking ties in 2014 over alleged human rights violations. Its president basically said North Korea's leadership was living in the Stone Age.
Strong words.
Very strong. And Peru expelled North Korean ambassadors in 2017 after nuclear tests. So you see these really contrasting reactions globally.
It underscores how polarizing North Korea is on the world stage.
Absolutely.
And, of course, relations with the United States, largely defined by the nuclear weapons program and long-range missile development.
Right, the constant source of tension.
Ongoing threats to strike the U.S. and South Korea. This is what led to those unprecedented meetings between Donald Trump and Kim Jong Un.
Yeah, Singapore in 2018.
Hanoi in 2019, and even that brief meeting at the Korean DMZ in 2019.
Aiming for denuclearization.
That was a stated aim, yes, although the follow-up talks ultimately broke down.
Right.
And it's interesting, Sweden actually acts as the protecting power for U.S. interests in North Korea, handling consular matters, since the U.S. has no embassy there.
Sweden does, okay.
And Switzerland, which is part of the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission monitoring the armistice, they offered mediation services between the U.S. and North Korea in 2017.
So some European countries playing these intermediary roles.
Sometimes, yes. And even Turkey, which fought against North Korea in the Korean War. They established diplomatic ties in 2001 and are currently negotiating the return of deceased Turkish soldiers' remains. It shows how complex and varied these relationships can be, even despite deep historical conflicts.
It really does. So summing up, from a supposed miracle economy decades ago through the devastating arduous march, and now navigating these complex, maybe incomplete reforms and holding this truly unique place in global diplomacy, North Korea's journey has been one of constant adaptation, hasn't it? Driven by its singular ideology and its long struggle for self-reliance.
It really has.
Yeah.
And this prompts us, I think, to consider a final question for you, the listener. In a society where even these burgeoning private market activities are ultimately framed as serving state objectives, what defines genuine economic reform and what remains steadfast? What are the constants in the face of continuous, often dramatic change?
That's definitely something worth mulling over.